Joining us is Deputy Political Leader of the political party Hope and former PNM Finance Minister, Mrs. Karen Nunez-Teshira. Pleasant good evening, ma'am.
Good evening to you and good evening, Mikey, to your listeners. I'm very happy to be with you this afternoon.
Thank you.
Or I should say this evening at this point in time.
Yeah. You made it quite clear saying that the contentious notion that Mr. Stuart Young would find it difficult securing leadership because the PNM is perceived as an Afro-Trinidadian party. Do you still believe that? I mean, in this day and age, many people are saying that we have gone past those perceptions, or do they still exist?
Well, I wouldn't like you to exclude the other points that I did make. The rank and file, I do believe, whether it's right or wrong, it's not a question of judgment on my part. But realistically, I think because many of them who find themselves at the so-called socioeconomic bottom of the barrel, so to speak, or in terms of economic opportunities, still continue to be those of Afro-Trinidadian background, and certainly that has persisted. That is not to say that the PNM has not attracted people of middle class, upper middle class, and it has always done that. But what adds to the issue of what I had mentioned is that Stuart Young is perceived to be a newbie, someone who has not paid his dues, someone who has not been and worked tirelessly in the vineyard, someone who has been handpicked by the Prime Minister with a small clique of persons who I do not think represent to many people. And you have to remember, I was just looking at the EBC for 2020, over 1.1 million people are entitled to vote. And if one looks at that, one has to be mindful of the fact that Mr. Stuart Young is not seen, number one, as being someone who paid his dues, like many of those who are still in the party. Remember, I was there in 2007. So I have a sort of an insight of the persons that we are looking at. Certainly Penny Beckles, who threatened, went up for the opposition leadership, is one of them. Foster Cummins, I think Robert Lujan. They are persons who might take exception to the fact that you bring in someone who is a newbie, so to speak, who has not paid his dues, who is seen to be part of an elitist group of persons whom the Prime Minister has surrounded himself with, and really and truly has been a failure in terms of national energy sector, despite all of what he has said. So the comments I made were made in the context not only of the Afro-Trinidadian base, which is the voting base of Trinidad and Tobago, but also because of the fact that there are people who have been there and have toiled in the vineyard. Whether you agree with their policies or not, that's not what I'm speaking about. From their point of view, having been there and having been there in 2007, having been there through a convention, I understand their expectations. And I don't know if you recall, but the PNM, in terms of its party membership, yes, it did increase by about 30,000 from those days in which Penny challenged the leader for the leadership. But he got 15,000 votes then. In the last occasion when I challenged, he got 8,000 votes. And I think there's a perception that many of those votes were from the CPEP and URP workers. So I'm not sure that they're going to sit back and allow him to bring in Stuart Young. I'm not giving up.
But let me interject here. Mr. Chair. Isn't it basically the quality of what that is being offered? I mean, yes, there may be people there. We definitely not going to debate that have been there perhaps 20 or 25 years prior to Mr. Young being part of the party. But Mr. Young seems to be a very valuable part of the administration to Dr. Rowley, someone who has brought a wealth of knowledge, perhaps in the as far as the family line to finance and what have you, and would have been able to assist the political leader. And of course, he has been brought up to the forefront as now acting prime minister in the absence of Dr. Rowley. So isn't it a case of someone perhaps bringing something to the table rather than those who may not be seen as effective when it comes to dealing with the politics of this country?
I beg to disagree with what your assessment is. I actually am doing a program on next week dealing with the energy sector. So I went and looked up the numbers that were provided from the Ministry of Energy. So the source was the Ministry of Energy. And as of 2024, the numbers in relation to natural gas production have fallen to 2.4 billion cubic feet, when in fact what you need is at least 4.1 billion. When it comes to barrels of oil per day, it has collapsed almost from, well, it would be unfair to compare to 140,000 in the heydays, but it has continued to be on the decline under his ministry. So I don't know what his claim to fame is. The Dragon Field has not been a success. With all what he's saying about the license, he knows and we know, and the public has not been fully apprised of it. It really depends on OFAC, the Office of Financial Assets Control, and that is United States. And they have only given us 2 years to exploit the Dragon Field. It's coming to an end in October 2025. And Shell has the shareholders, and they refuse to make a final investment decision in regard to the Dragon Field. It is 4.3 trillion. So I don't want to go on and on about it, but I am doing a show next week with Kevin Ramnarai, and if you look at it objectively, without the fluff and all of the glamour and the smoke and mirrors that they put forward to you, you have to look at the numbers and the results. And if I have to judge him by results, I am going to say he has been a complete failure as a Minister of Energy. He's good at talking, as is his Prime Minister. His Prime Minister seems to appear to have him as the anointed one, but to say that he has been successful, and the crassness, whether he intended or not to be caught on the mic, is following in the footsteps of his Prime Minister. And I can assure you that most people are unhappy about that. And apart from all of that, you have to understand, I was there in 2007. I was there when they had a convention. And there are many, many people who are still in the PNM, who are still members of the PNM, who are still holding positions, I don't want to be clearer than that have their ambition, rightfully so, that they feel that they are rightfully the ones, whether they deserve it or not. But I don't think that, I do not think that Mr. Stuart Young has done anything. In fact, for this year, do you know what the figures were? 2.4 billion, and that came from his ministry. His ministry provided the data. So you can't say I got it from somewhere else. I went to the review of the economy for 2024. 2.1 billion cubic feet of gas. That is about as low as it has ever been, and that goes for also for barrels of oil per day, reaching 47,000 barrels. What has he done? All that talk about Dragon Fields in 2019, where has that gone? Please don't let me start.
Yeah, and
nothing against him. I have nothing against him. But if I were in the PNM and I was in the likes of Foster Cummins, Penny Beckles, even Robert Lujan,
or Dr. Amy Brown,
I do not think, and my understanding of politics within the party, that they are going to sit by lightly and allow Stuart Young to be the anointed one. That is not
I take where you're coming from. Prior to you coming on, we had the shadow minister of energy, the member of parliament for Pointe-à-Pierre, Dr. David Lee. And one of the things I looked at is that we are being told perhaps 2027, according to Dr. Rowley, that this energy sector is going to give us this boom. But that in itself is hard to predict when you're predicting the future of energy, because there's so many factors: technology, geopolitics, climate change, all of these things. So are we hitching our economic wagon onto simply a pie in the sky?
Not only that, listen, I mean, you see what they don't talk about and what they're not wanting you to focus on. And this is where I have my problem, because they talk about the license. Listen, Venezuela has given license to Enan and Repsol since 1990s. They say all of those, the OFAC, which is the Office of Control of Asset, Office of Asset Control from the United States, they do not have any impact on them because they supply the European market based on the Ukraine-Russian war. We supply the Asian market. What I'm trying to say to you is it's not the license that matters. It's not the license. Don't you realize that that Shell, they just like, Shell will not make and has not made a final investment decision about Dragonfly. Now, they tie their horses or they tie their future to Dragonfly, which may not have been a good idea in first instance. Having made that commitment, it is not the license that matters, it's OFAC that matters. And Shell has tried to get OFAC to give them a 15-year agreement because the Shell shareholders are not going to deal with Maduro with the kind of mercurial unpredictability of Mr. Maduro, and the fact that America is continuing with its, and it did not work, the maximum pressure against Venezuela. They are not going to put into the hands of Venezuela fiat or currency, and they have only given us an OFAC license that is up in 2020. And I don't know if you saw that Mr. Dr. Watson said even if they make the 2028 debt, you have no control over price. You're putting all your eggs in a basket full of holes. All the other Caribbean countries have recovered since
COVID.
the COVID,
Yeah.
and they have recovered because of their reliance on tourism. So this whole focus on the license, it's not the license, it's OFAC. And OFAC and Shell try to get OFAC to give them a 15-year license to relief from sanctions license, which they have not gotten. So all of this talk, that is why Manatee, which is in our waters, which only represents 20-something% of the natural gas available, Shell did make a final investment decision because it's not in Venezuelan water. What I am trying to say in the round, this idea that Stuart Young, first of all, is the protege of the Prime Minister. The way that the Constitution is set up, there is absolutely no guarantee, and I suspect there's absolutely no guarantee. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I suspect that the rank and file of the PNM will not support Mr. Stuart Young. And if you have to just look as a way of an indicator, when I had gone up for the leadership of the PNM, which is usually looked at as, well, you have intentions of becoming the Prime Minister, because that's how it works.
Right, yeah.
Do you know that it's the number of persons that joined the PNM increased by about 30,000, yet only 8,000 people voted compared to 15,000 when Penny Beckles challenged him for the leadership. Don't you understand there are 1.1 million people who can vote? Don't you understand that under Section 76, 1A of the Constitution, whilst he may, as the leader of the party who has majority support of the members on the assumption that the PNM wins, it does not mean that those same PNM MPs will determine that he does not have his support. He does not have their support, because they will not acknowledge, they will not support that inner circle that do not represent the rank and file of the PNM. And the PNM has gone through 10 years to show that they do not care about the rank and file of the PNM, but their wagon is tied to a small, tiny group in this economy that certainly does not representative of what the PNM is. So I would just say to you that in my respectful opinion, I do not have my opinion is based on my understanding of the convention, understanding of some of the players.
And taking from that all that you've said, you believe that the holding off of the internals and the convention has a lot to do with the internal wrangling in the party. But when you look at the words that was used by the Prime Minister, he said, "Madam Speaker, it has been a pleasure working with you as parliamentary speaker. I don't know how much longer I will have in this parliament, but I have done my duty and I have kept the course."
When you're going to say that, I'm going to put no value on that. So don't let me start on that. What I will say, that's sticking to the critical point. And of course, I don't have a crystal ball and I'm not inside, but I have enough understanding. The Prime Minister, in my respectful opinion, without having inside information, as they like to say, I would say that he would not want to run the risk of having a convention because people have gotten a message that he has no intention of staying. So what would have acted as a deterrent from people coming out and challenging the leadership of the PNM no longer applies because they understand, just like many, like Panday, like Chambers, like a number of those who came before, once you are no longer the Prime Minister, no longer you are nobody. You are nothing and you are nobody. And if you understand politics, you understand that well. So when it comes to the leadership, I do not think he wants to take the risk, that's in my opinion, to have a convention when persons who take great umbrage to him selecting among the persons he wants to take over from him, his proteges, as belonging to a select upper middle class group of persons who do not identify, and let us be frank, on a racial level with them, whatever the right or wrong of that. And so what has happened, he, in my respectful opinion, given the outing of 8,000 people in an internal election, with 100 and something people or 400 and something people voted in his constituency over 3 years, he knows that he is not a popular leader among his own people. And what holds them back is his power. And if that power is taken away from him, all of those persons who are sitting, I saw it myself when I was there in 2000. I saw it myself.
I agree.
People were sitting there, wanting position, but kept quiet and didn't get it, but were greatly disappointed. You'd be surprised the names, but I can't call them.
I have a clear idea. I want to thank you. Our time is up, but I definitely want to get back to you next week on the issues of hope, the political party, your deputy political leader, and honestly and truly, we want to get some insight on what are the plans for the upcoming general elections for the party.
I just want to say my party view is that I think he is fearful of calling that election. He's also fearful. He's in a catch-22 situation, because if he doesn't want to call it because he doesn't want the whole thing to be exposed and the UNC to get a foot in. So that's one thing. But then again, if he goes into the elections, he has to choose the persons who he wants as MPs. Is he going to exclude those people? He can't exclude them, because if he excludes them, he's running the risk of losing the election. And if he includes them under Section 76(1)(a), they can remove him not as MP, but they can remove him as Prime Minister if the majority of them do not support him as the Prime Minister of the country. Section 76(1)(a). So bear that in mind. And
thank you so much, Mr. Nunez-Teshira. Keep up the good work. And next week, I'll be touching base with you. Thank you so much.
And I'd love to talk about who. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.